They want to give you 10 reasons why you should visit Cuba 2023, 2024 and beyond. Number 1 is the culture. Cuba is a very unique country with a blend of cultures, which has been one of the most richest cultures in Latin America due to the African, the Spanish, and the indigenous heritage. If you really want to visit Cuba because of the culture, I highly recommend you to do so. The result is going to be a very vibrant culture that is going to be very diversified due to art, the dance, the music, the food, the history. Reason number 2 is the people. The people in Cuba are very, very friendly. This is something that most people know, and if you haven't ever visited Cuba before, I recommend you to do just because of the people are going to be very welcoming, very nice, and this is something that marks people when they visit Cuba. If you had the chance of visiting Cuba, let me know in the comments below your experiences with the Cuban people. The reason number 3 why you should visit Cuba is the history. Cuba is a very rich country when it comes to history, and let me explain why. That's because you're living in Cuba. Cuba has a fascinating history, and you can see that. Once you come, you're going to see the architecture, you're going to see the museums, you're going to see even the people, how they treat you. You're going to see that Cuba has been involved in a very complex past. And the truth is that nowadays, it's having a lot of issues which make us even richer when it comes to the history. Reason number 4, of course, everybody knows this, is the beaches in Cuba. Cuba has one of the most beautiful beaches in Latin America and even in the world. For example, one of the most beautiful ones are Varadero and Guardalavaca. If you had a chance of visiting Cuba before, you really know what I'm talking about. So you should be visiting Cuba just because of the beaches. So many people do this. Canadians, Europeans, they come to Cuba because Cuba is very warm, and when they have winter in their countries, they come here looking for the beaches, looking for this warm weather. Actually, Cuba is almost warm all the time, so think about that. The reason number 5 is the Cuban music. Nowadays we have been evolving, and actually Cuba is very well known now to the reggaeton, but we cannot miss talking about the Cuban salsa and other rhythms like the rumba, for example. And if you come to Cuba, you might try. It's like visiting Cuba and not trying a Cuban cigar when you go to the farm in Vinales, or like visiting Cuba and not trying a Cuban rum, which is one of the most delicious rum in the world. Or it's like visiting Cuba and not trying to do some step of salsa, for example. Some people get impressed by how much music you can hear when you come to Cuba, although we're not having any festival, anything. It's because of the Cuban culture. You go, you walk around, and you're gonna see people playing music in their house, reggaeton, jazz, salsa, whatever. People are happy all the time, even though we have a lot of problems. The reason number 6, although it's not very famous, is the Cuban food. The Cuban cuisine, the Cuban cuisine is very mixed due to the Spanish, the African, and some other Caribbeans influences. So if you come to Cuba, you're going to have a lot of dishes that you can try. For example, la ropa vieja, you can try the Cuban lobster. Now, if you want to get involved about what real Cubans, most locals eat nowadays, you're going to try the chicken. It might sound crazy, but chicken in Cuba nowadays is top leader. The reason number 7 is one that we talked about, which is the architecture. You're going to have so many Spanish colonial styles to Art Deco. So it's like visiting Cuba is going to be very contrasting in all the ways. The reason number 8 is the nature, and this is something that I love. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I love traveling within the island because I love the nature of Cuba. It's very warm. You can find very, very unique places like Topes del Collante, or you can go to Trinidad, you can go to Vinales, and you can see the Bogotes, or maybe you can go to a place that I already went the last month, which is called Canasy. You're gonna have beautiful spots if you really love nature, peaceful places. And actually, at the end of this video, I'm gonna recommend you to watch one of the videos that I made so you can see by yourself if Cuba worth it or not. Visit it just because of the nature. Reason number 9 is the nightlife in Cuba. If you like dancing, for example, you can get a mojito, you can go to some restaurants, some places with live music, and you can have a real Cuban experience. The reason number 10 is something that I always talk about, which is going to be a life-changing experience. Ultimately, Cuba has been very famous due to all the problems that it has. And by problems, I mean all the crisis, all this shortage, so many things. Whether you're coming to Cuba because you want to have a luxury experience and you want to be, I don't know, staying in some luxury hotels, or maybe you want to go to the Cayos, or maybe you want to go to Varadero, and that's completely fine. You can go and check the community of Cuba, how real people live, and that's going to change the way you see life completely, because it's going to be very different. And by what I mean different, it's going to be life-changing to what you normally see in your country. And of course, there's so many people have a lot of troubles, so many people have a lot of problems, so many people have a lot of, crisis somehow. But Cuba is different, because Cuba has been like this for so long. If you want to know more about Cuba, if you're really interested about how Cuba is, I highly recommend you guys to watch this video right here that I made for you. And actually, I was visiting a very local place. See you guys in that video. Love you.